Okay, so we've got this project I'm using as an example, and so following on from the last video, the families that I set up, you can see have different materials, and so I've done it as an instance parameter, as you would have seen in the last video, and I'll just click there on the material to show you what that wood laminate material looks like. Now, it's good actually the way that it's come up, because you can see here it's showing the render appearance, and this is the part that I think confuses people the most when they start looking at Revit Materials. And even if you've been using Revit for quite a while, this is something that might not might not be clear. So, as I said, this is showing the render appearance. As I also said, it's the wood laminate material. Now, how do I know that? By looking here. How do I know it's the wood laminate material that I'm looking at? If you look at what's there on the screen, how can you tell? It's not obvious, but if you look at the title here, you can see materials wood laminate. That's the only way you can tell that you're working on that material. So it's really confusing. If you don't look out for that, you won't know. You won't work it out. So here it's on appearance. If I go to graphics, then you'll see it's much more obvious which material is selected, because you see the full list of materials from the project. Okay, so make sure that's firm in your mind, that you understand these are your Revit materials in each project, and they have two aspects. They've got the graphics aspect, which I'll come back to in a moment, and then the render appearance. And the confusing thing about that is when you're on the render appearance, you don't see that full list of materials all the time. You can bring it back by going to materials here, but it will bring up that property sets panel, which hides it. Okay, so just watch out for that. And so, firstly, if you're not sure, the graphics panel here is really important. So when you're setting up the materials for each of your objects, this is what you see in views like this, in your shaded views and your hidden line views and your wireframe views. It uses these graphic settings. So whatever color you set for shading is probably one of the most important things, but then also your surface pattern. And I'm not going to go too far with this because we want to focus more on the rendering, but in case you haven't done much of this before, do you know what to use for your surface patterns here? Yeah. So would you use drafting or model for your surface patterns? It's definitely one and not the other.
Can I have that in the marker?
Yeah, well, that's the right idea. So yeah, that's probably the right idea. So what you're trying to think about here is why you would be using drafting in, I'll just show you what we're looking at, in a surface pattern, and not model in a surface pattern, well, or the other way around. So drafting patterns are these ones here, which are symbols. Okay, so this symbol or this pattern here represents aluminium. It's not a drawing of aluminium. And again, with the brickwork, that's the pattern that represents brickwork. It's not a drawing of some bricks and the concrete. It's kind of like a drawing of some concrete, but really it's a symbol. So going down through all of these, you'll see they're symbolic representations, symbols that represent the material associated with them. Going to the model patterns, you'll see they're more like drawings. So going down through the list here, the horizontal and square patterns are used for things like floorboards and tiles, but then going down further, you'll see things like block for concrete block work, the herringbone for brick pavers and things like that, parquetry for parquetry flooring, and they look like the things they represent. So they're generally used for surface patterns because they're the things you see on the outside of your objects, and that's a really important thing. So when I talk about, yeah, exactly, when I talk about showing materials in your views, and this is in 3D views as well as your plans, sections, elevations, that's a really important thing, understanding architectural graphics. And it's called architectural graphics, even though you're doing interior design. Exactly the same style of representation. That's fundamental. More important than being able to do photorealistic renders is the ability to clearly represent materials with these drawings, these patterns that people know, even if they're drawings like this for brick. It might not be the exact size of your brickwork, but they see this brick pattern on your surfaces, they know it's brickwork. So, so that's for your model, or they are model patterns for your surfaces. So you've got the option of using drafting there. I don't think I've ever used it for a surface pattern. and I don't because it scales. And we'll talk about that more later if we have time. But just as a general rule of thumb, use model for your surfaces and you'll be fine.
How will that show up on the plan? Like, doesn't it have everything plan?
Yeah, I'll show you. Okay, so in plan here, I've got a surface pattern set for my flooring. Okay, so they're floorboards, just with a horizontal pattern. So they represent floorboards that have 100 mil spacing or something like that. Okay, so that's how I'll show you. And then in the wall, I'll probably have a cut pattern. Maybe not. No, there's no cut pattern there at the moment, but that will be a different pattern and show with a different line weight to the surface patterns. So that is a really important thing. Just going back to the materials for the desk. Okay, so back to here. Okay, so the cut pattern, you don't even have the option of setting model there. You can only set drafting. Okay, because that should always be a symbol of the material, not a picture of the material itself. Okay, so make sure you're comfortable setting the graphics, and that ties into what I showed you before with the object styles. So just one last time, on the Manage tab, you've got your object styles. And so if you're wondering why your walls have black lines, this is why. Okay, because they're set to be black in here. And the line weight, I showed you before, they're from light to heavy. So 1 is the lightest, 16 is the heaviest. And then your colour, sorry, your line type, or your line pattern, just like AutoCAD, layers. So you can adjust all of those things, and you might be unlucky and get the one that is green, and that's your curtain systems. So watch out for those. But otherwise, everything should come in black. Okay, so you've got all of those things that go together to make your materials in these shaded and hidden line views. And that is a really important thing. But then going back to the render appearance, that's the thing I want to focus on mainly. And so going to appearance, you can see I'm still on wood laminate, and we've got these two panels now. So starting with the Autodesk library, I'm sure you've all chosen materials from here before. So have you noticed that it's locked at the top and wondered what the lock means? Okay, so well, the lock means you can't change it. So that's read only. So that's always going to be the same. You can't adjust anything in there. So it's a selection of basic materials to get you started. So going into here, we've got all sorts of ceramic tiles, and you can start with any of those template-like materials. So I'll go down to plastic, and I'll choose a new one. So I've got this awful grey for my laminate at the moment. I'm going to go for a blue laminate, might be nicer. All right, now this has these specific properties at the moment, but you'll see up the top here now, I've got these property sets area, and that's where it's gone. So I can always get this laminate navy that I'm using in this project back from here at the top. Okay, and it's a bit confusing, but that's if you're wondering why this part's locked. You can't change that, but you can once you get it into here, and it comes into here automatically just by clicking on it. You can get the one that you've been working on. Okay, so I'm going to make some changes now, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so I'll just make that a bit smaller. So at the moment, we've got this colour from an image. Now, I'm tempted to show you an even simpler one first. I might just go to I wanted to get a more plain plastic. Yeah, smooth navy. Yeah, that's better. All right, so I've got here a simpler plastic which doesn't use an image. And so when you're setting your materials, is it obvious to you that some of them have fairly simple settings and then some have a more complex setup using an image, like the one I just started with? Well, okay, so I'll show you the one with an image in a moment, but this is an example of a simpler material, and you can see here it's got this colour. So that's the most important setting there. Clicking on the colour swatch, I can adjust the colour and set it to anything I like. So Have you used red, green and blue? I'm sure you all have. Set your colours in Photoshop and other programs. So you'd know that using these values here from 0 to 255, you can set virtually any colour. Okay, so what is it, 16 million colours? Okay, but you need to just know what those values do. You can always just click on a hue here and it'll set those values and then adjust them with the brightness slider. But it's important that you know how the colours are set with red, green and blue. So maybe I'll go for a nicer blue. Okay, so then the only other thing that matters here really is the finish, whether it's polished, glossy or matte. So it's a fairly preset material. A lot of the things have been set up for you basically in a template for plastic. Now going to that more complex one again, I'll get the navy, the laminate navy. Which, well, I can get it from here, but actually I'll get it from up here. You'll see, again, because I clicked on it before, it's in this property sets panel. Okay, so there you can see this one's a little bit more complicated because it's been set, instead of using a color, to use an image. So clicking on the image there, you can see it's set to be a little less bright than it originally is. So that's why it looks a little bit dark there. You can adjust the brightness of that. But then aside from the brightness and any other adjustments to the image, probably the most important thing is the size. So if you imagine this image in your scene, it's set to be 254, which if you're wondering is exactly 10 inches. So, well, actually not very big. That long, I'd say, is about 10 inches. Okay, so not that big. You could probably get away with it being bigger, especially if you want to see the grain a bit more obviously. So you could take it up to be maybe double that, about 500. Okay, that'll be more obvious when you're working with things like floorboards and tiles, where you've got an exact size that you can set, and I'll maybe do one of those for you. But otherwise, those are the most important things. So you've got things that to adjust the image up here, like the brightness, and then the size is really important. You generally want it to set to tile, always, so it repeats. Otherwise, you'll just get one copy of the image, so you'll get it starting on the corner of your desk maybe. You'll just get one of those little 10-inch swatches, and that's it. So you don't want that very often. So on tile, you want to leave that. Okay, so that one's done. Notice it's got finished bumps as well, so that is probably going to be set to use a similar image. You can see it's actually using a different one, but it's similar. Notice it's black and white, not colour, and that's because it uses black for the low parts and white for the high parts.
Are you double clicking enough?
Not just clicking once, so I'm just clicking once on the swatch.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here, it's really important that I set this image size to be the same as the colour one. So it also needs to be 500, otherwise they won't line up. Okay, so it's a fake bump effect. The surface is still flat in reality, but when it renders, it uses lighting tricks to make it look like it's bumpy. Okay, you can probably see that there now a little bit, that sort of textured look on the edges. So that one's done. Okay, and you can see now, well, it hasn't actually changed in this viewport. I'm going to go to realistic, and you'll see it is blue. Okay, so it's definitely blue, and we can see the texture there. So I've maybe made it a little bit big, but you can at least see it. Back to shaded, it's not grey. And that's because of that aspect I mentioned earlier, the graphics. Okay, so the graphics here, you can see is still set to have that grey colour. So a good trick there is just to tick use render appearance for shading, and that will pick up the colour from the render colour. But then turn it off so you can adjust that further, and usually I'll make it a bit lighter because that's a bit dark. So I'll make it a bit lighter, and that's probably a nicer colour for the shaded views. So I'm going to click OK, OK, and now when I deselect it, I'll see the colour in the shaded views as well. Okay, so it's always important to think about the shaded material, even when you're working mainly on your render material. And so I'll do a timber material as well. I've already got one on the floorboards. I'll just show you again. If I go to a realistic view, you can see the timber image that I've used for that material coming in on the flooring there. Okay, so I'll do one in another part. No, actually, sorry, to save time, I'll just show you that one because I want to get onto the 3ds Max. So I'll just select that floor, and I'm going to go into Edit Type and show you that material. Edit here for the structure, and you can see it's just called Existing because I've been lazy with this project. So I'm going to browse though and show you that material has actually not been set directly to the floor. I've been really lazy with this one, so this is good for you to see though, because I'm sure you'll do the same thing. So there you can see the material is existing. It's white in shading, and the rendered appearance is also white. So do you know why it's got the timber? How else can you assign the material if it's not assigned directly within the object? Do you know the other way? Oh, okay. So this is, again, a good thing for you to see. So I always like to go over the main procedures. So if you don't know this one, on the Modify panel, you've got the Paint tool. Okay, so the Paint tool lets you override any surface's material. Okay, so that's how I've assigned that timber material to the floor. By going to Paint here, and then choosing a material from this list. It seems quicker and easier at first because you can just quickly go around picking the surfaces and directly assigning the materials. The problem is when you make your changes, because you might decide later, I want these walls to be red paint instead of blue paint. So that means you need to go and pick each surface that you've painted red and paint it blue manually. Whereas if you've set it in the wall, all you need to do is go and choose one of your red walls and say, I want you to be blue, and then all of your walls will go blue. Okay, so you just need to think about those things, because that's what building information management is all about. That's what, like Revit, when they say building information management, is the software, the type of software it is. That's because it's describing what it's good at. It's good at managing things, and you might have already worked out it's not the best modeler in the world. And so when people say it's a 3D program, they're not really describing the main aspects of it, because it's more the management than the 3D side. You know, because it needs to manage 3D things as well, it does have all these 3D features. But anyway, I know that's something that does come over time. So here you can see anyway the timber material that I've assigned. So it's called Wood Original Boards. So I'm now going to go to the Manage tab and then Materials to get to that material. So if you're going to use that Paint tool, then you have to make the material first in here anyway. So that's the only way to get to your materials. Remember, you've got to go to Manage and then Materials first. And again, you can just do the graphics and the appearance for your material first. So there, if I go down, you'll see Wood Original Boards. And you can see it's got this surface pattern. So that's why you saw the horizontal lines in Plan. In Cut, it would show with vertical lines, which would change size depending on the scale, because they're a drafting pattern. And then on Appearance, you can see the, or Render Appearance, you can see the image that's being used for those floorboards. And here I think it's much easier to work out the size. Okay, because if you just count the floorboards, it's between the two ends of the dimension is the original image. It just shows you a little bit extra above and below so you can see what happens when it repeats. Okay, so here you can see between those two ends of the dimension, we've got, what is it, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 or so floorboards. So if I wanted them to be 100 mil each in my scene, then I just need to make my image 1600 mil. Okay, so it's that easy when you see something that you can relate the size to, like floorboards or tiles, things like that, brickwork as well. Okay, so so now when it renders, I know it will be exactly 100 mil each board, and you'll see now it'll change size. There we go, you can see it right away. All right, so it's that easy once you know how the size is worked out. And sorry, I should have shown you as well, it's still in that material. You've still got those other aspects to think about, like the finish. And then don't forget to look for things other than the colour. So this first part here, you probably worked out already, is all about the colour. Okay, so the image is providing the colour instead of just setting a single uniform colour. And then the reflectance as well is also going to contribute to the colour. Then the relief pattern determines things like the bumps. So in this case, it's quite simple because it's simply based on the wood grain. So you don't need to go and set that separately to the image. Okay, so you don't have to go and set the size because it's just going to pick it up from this one. All right, so that one is done. And maybe just so you can see, I'll do a quick render here, and then I'll take this into 3ds Max and show you how to do materials in there. Okay, so I might pause the video while it's rendering, and you know, if you want to have a quick break. Or before I do though, just let me know, is there anything else with materials in Revit that you're not sure about? Because I know a lot of you maybe will start looking at things like self-illuminated materials, partially transparent materials, materials with a bit of depth like fabric and things like that, which you can do in Revit, all of those things. But it's because those more complex materials have issues, especially things like glowing materials and also semi-opaque materials, semi-transparent and translucent materials do tend to have problems with Revit. That's why I want to show you more about those in 3ds Max. Okay, but let me know if you're looking at doing especially self-illuminated materials, glowing materials in Revit, and you're having trouble. Let me know, and I can maybe look at that with you individually. So I'll just pause that. Okay, so I've got my very basic render, but at least you can see those materials there, and so you probably know what that message was about, people who can't use the remote control. Seems to be a genetic disorder. Anyhow, I'll just finish that video, and I'll do another one for materials in 3ds Max.